Grüß Gott. Hello there, fellow travelers. Mark here with Wolters World. And we're in Salzburg, Austria, one of the cutest towns you can check out in Europe. And today what we have for you are 10 things that might shock you about coming to Austria, okay? So let's get started. The first thing that shocks a lot of tourists when they come to Austria is the fact that Austria is not Germany, okay? People, it's a different country. The Austrians don't like the Germans. They don't want to be associated with the Germans. They're not cool with the Germans, so don't compare them to that. They don't appreciate it. Yes, they do speak German here, but their German's a little bit different. Schweinhaxe is here. Schweinhaxe, Hamhaxe, that's what it is in Germany. Here it's Schnitzel. Okay, there's a few differences in the language and the way they are, but look, this is not Germany. That's the first thing that might shock people. It's not. The beer, not so good. The wine is, but the beer's not. Okay, so that's the first thing a lot of people are kind of shocked about. They expect Austria to be Germany Junior, and it's not. It's definitely its own kind of culture and its own kind of people, all right? Now, the second thing that might shock you while you're here is the calories or cakes galore, okay? Yes, the cakes, the pastries all over the shops and the cafes that you will see, the candies and chocolates and oh my goodness, all kinds of places. When you do come here, you see them everywhere and you're like, oh my God, how there's so many cafes? How many are so many cakes? Look, I'm drooling thinking about it, okay? And it does shock tourists, like, my God, how do they have so many bakeries? How do they have so many cafes with nice little cakes and stuff? Well, it is kind of shocking, but yes, they are everywhere, and yes, you should have them because they are shockingly good when you do eat them. Whether it is the traditional Sauerkraut or apple strudel or Linzer Torte, or if you have your Mozart Kugeln when you're walking around, there's so many ways to gain calories when you're here, whether it's cake or pork or Wiener Schnitzel or whatever, you will get shocked about how big you can get on your love for Austrian food. Let's put it that way. The third thing that might shock you about coming here is how good the tourist infrastructure is in Austria, with hotels, bed and breakfasts, the trains, public transport, all kinds of things out here in English and German. It is extremely well put together. The Austrians have had tourists forever. I mean, the Austrians, they've been all over. They had part of Hungary and they had Italy and they were all over the place, and they brought a lot of that back, and they've made a really great tourist infrastructure for tourists when they do come here. And that is kind of shocking when you're not used to that. If you're coming from the east or the south of Europe, you're like, whoa, everything's so put together here. It's kind of crazy. So yes, that can be a bit shocking. It's a really good tourist infrastructure here in Austria. The fourth thing that might shock you is, remember I told you about how Austria was in Italy and Croatia and Hungary and all these things. Well, the Habsburg Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, the Habsburg family really had influence all over, and Austria really has had a lot of influence throughout the history of Europe over the last, 1,000 years with the Holy Roman Empire. And yes, they did, going down into Italy and Croatia and Hungary and all this, you will see the building styles showing up when you're going to Budapest or Bratislava. And the Habsburgs really did influence a lot of Europe, and you may be surprised, a tiny country like Austria really did have a lot of power over the centuries, okay? But that might shock you as the Habsburg influence in culture and history throughout Europe. The fifth thing that might shock you about coming to Austria is how quaint all the old towns are. I mean, look, this is just the back side. This isn't even the front side. This is the back side of the cathedral here in Salzburg. And all the old towns, the Altstadt, of all these villages and towns in Austria are fantastic. Because yes, the Habsburg put a lot of money into making the towns beautiful. Innsbruck, Vienna, Hallstatt, all these things. And you have all these great towns and historic districts out there. And they've done a very great job of keeping it historic, okay? And that kind of shocks you, is that you can go to pretty much any village in Austria and like, wow, this is really pretty. Whereas some places, you go to Germany, some places the war destroyed a lot of the towns. They weren't rebuilt very sexy-like. They were built in 1950s and 60s style. Austria, you don't have that. So all these villages, all these towns have these historic, wonderful old towns. You don't even know what the town is. You're like, wow, that was beautiful. Wow, that was beautiful. Wow, that was beautiful. And that can be shocking for people that are going on the river cruises or just traveling around. The sixth thing that might shock you about coming to Austria is, I've talked about all these nice things. Well, there's some bad stuff about Austria too. And the sixth thing is the service. They're not super friendly, they're not super helpful, and shockingly, you still need to tip them about 10% when you eat. So if you're going out to restaurants or hotels, make sure you have your exact questions, because if you ask exact questions, they will give you exact answers. Maybe not the most friendly or helpful, but they will give you a professional answer. The seventh thing that might shock people when they come here is how much Austrians love Austria. I mean, some people say they're almost nationalistic about their obsession with Austria, how we were once the most powerful land in the world and all this kind of stuff. And just know that if you're coming here, they love Austria. It might be shocking to you. They'll say, we have been neutral since 1955 and we're this. And you will hear a lot more about Austrian history and culture and stuff like that while you're here than you will other places, which is fine, because what's cool for tourists is that national pride they do have means they have some of the best folk art museums, some of the best traditional museums here, city museums like here in Salzburg. If you go to Innsbruck, and the Tyrol Folk Museum there is one of the best folk museums. They take, you know, houses from all over Tyrol and they put them into this museum, and it's fantastic. So yes, it can be a bit off-putting when you see how much they love themselves, but also for a tourist it really works out because you get some really great museums and really true history of the country. The 8th thing that might shock you when you come here is most people, when they think of Austria, they're like, okay, there's Vienna, which is, you know, this palace after palace after palace, and Salzburg with all this great stuff here. But actually the nature of Austria is beautiful, whether you go to the Alps by Innsbruck, or you're here by the lakes here by Salzburg, or you go into the Wienerwald, the Vienna forest outside of Vienna. There's so much great nature here that you really need to get out of the cities. It's not just going to Vienna, Graz, Salzburg, Innsbruck, okay, I'm gone. Make sure you stop off and do some hiking or skiing or something like that, because it is great here. The 9th thing that might shock you about coming here is, again, remember, this isn't Germany, and lots of people come here and they think, well, I'm going to drink beer when I'm in Austria. Don't drink the beer in Austria. It's gross, okay? Stiegel is okay and Goethe is okay, but it's not going to Germany. It's not going to the Czech Republic. Here in Austria, what you should do is drink the wine. The white wine here is fantastic. Stick to that, you'll be just fine. And that is kind of shocking for people. They think, well, they speak German, they should be drinking beer all the time. Okay, so stick to the wine. The wine's really good. And the 10th thing that might shock you is when you come to Austria, it is so easy to get cultured when you're here because there's so many museums, there's so many historic sites. I mean, there's like 5 Mozart sites here in Salzburg. I mean, granted, he was born here, but there's so many really cool culture things here that if you are a backpacker, you know, and you're like, I'm coming from Amsterdam and I'm smoking my dope and I'm doing these things. I did my interlocking, spelunking, and rafting, and now I'm in Salzburg, I'm in Austria, and now you really can get cultured with the museums, with the history, and all these kind of things, the architecture, and it is really kind of cool, and that kind of shocks people, and they think, wow, I've actually felt like I've grown culturally when I come to Austria. Anyway, those are 10 things I think might shock you about coming to Austria. If you want to learn more, 5 things you're going to love or hate about Austria, check us out on our website at woltersworld.com. We're also on Twitter and Facebook, and we really appreciate your likes and subscriptions. And if you like videos like this, go down there and click that subscribe button so you can get more videos like this in your feed every week. Anyway, we'll see you later, and tschüss, or auf Wiedersehen from Salzburg, Austria. Tschüss.